Hello everybody, welcome to my channel Life Beyond Vision. Once again, my name is Diego, and in this video I'm going to continue that chronological timeline, and I'm going to talk about what happened during that junior year of high school right after I got the news of my vision having decreased, and basically getting the news that my RP progressed and I was going to start to lose my vision, right? So this is going to be a summary of all that year. But many of these topics that I will be mentioning in this video are basically going to be videos on their own in future videos. So let's get to it. So my junior year started in September, right? And September was that middle month between those 3 months that I had to, be in recovery, and that the doctor had said that my vision was going to come back to normal, etc., right? So I wasn't too worried, or I wasn't too, it wasn't really hitting me, right? That I wasn't able to see, because I still had that hope with me, right? All that hope that I was going to be able to see. So it wasn't something that I was already kind of grieving, right? So once October came, late October or early November, when the doctor actually told me and showed me the pictures and told me that my vision had gotten worse and that it looks like it's going to start getting worse, that's when it actually hit me. And I was like, oh man, when the doctor told me that, I just felt like my whole world collapsed. I didn't know what to do, where to start, how to feel. It was just overwhelming because everything was new now, right? I had to adjust to many things, right? A lot of people say that the junior year in high school is one of your most important years because of the SAT or ACT. At the time, that's what we took here in Chicago. I believe now they take the SAT. And so that's, what universities and colleges are looking for when you apply. So that's a whole, problem on its own, or thing, right? On top of that, I was also taking advanced placement courses, right? Like I mentioned, I was taking English and US history, and I was also in honors courses. So, I just had a lot going on, right? And on top of that, you add on, I'm a teenager, right? I'm looking for my identity. I'm trying to figure out who I am as a person, right? That's one of the biggest things that, the adolescent years are. It's a place where you start finding who you are, what kind of person you want to be, your own values, your own morals, things like that, right? On top of that, you add the fact that I'm losing my vision, right? So everything that I used to do a certain way before, I have to learn how to do it without my vision, in a way, right? So adjusting to learning new ways of learning, basically. So before, I used to learn how to, do things by seeing, right? Now I had to start kind of relying a little bit more on audio, right? And adapting to using a magnifying glass, this big magnifiers that I had to use, also big large print books, which, to be honest, they were huge for no reason, because the print wasn't actually that bigger. On top of that, I had to learn how to use certain technology, right? And also, once the school found out that I was actually losing vision, they put me with, I started getting like blind services. So I got a vision teacher for the visually impaired or whatnot. So I had to start learning Braille, and I had to start getting orientation and mobility, right? Which is learning how to use a cane and, walk around and do all these things. So I had all that going on, right? And I just wasn't ready to take on everything, right? It just all came at once, just from left, from right, dealing with friends, dealing with my family. It was just, oh man, thinking about it now, it gets me anxious, because I don't know how I did it, but I'll be honest, it was difficult, right? So those first few months were extremely difficult. I went back to school, and I had to start learning things, right? I remember my chemistry teacher, Miss Purdue, well, now she's Miss Kerr, or Mrs. Kerr. She was my chemistry teacher, and I believe she didn't know that I used to see before, right? So I remember in the class, she was passing out rulers, and she's like, well, which one do you usually use? And in my head, I was thinking, I usually use whichever, right? It doesn't matter, because I could see before. And now it's kind of like I have to think, right? I have to be like, okay, well, I'll take the wooden ruler because that one has the best contrast in terms of the numbers and I guess the background, right? Because if I take one of those clear colored ones, I won't be able to see the numbers, right? While before it was just like, I'll just grab a ruler and go, So, there were little things that I had to start thinking about, right? On top of that, like I said, it all was getting overwhelming, right? So I remember I stopped my AP US history teacher once and I told her, you know what, I think I'm going to drop my AP courses. I don't think I'll be able to manage all the work. And I was serious. I was actually serious about dropping it. I was like, I don't think I can do this. And Miss Field, she was my AP US history teacher. She told me, you know what, Diego, you're a very intelligent young man. You should stay this semester and see how it goes. And then if you by the end of the semester, if you really think you can't, or, things aren't going the way you want, we can talk about it then and see if, you could either drop one course or both or see what we can do. So I agreed and I decided to stay, right? I wasn't happy. I wasn't like, okay, I'll stay and I'll try. It was more of a, okay, we'll see what happens. I was just, not there emotionally and like motivational. I just wasn't there. And so, like I said, things were overwhelming. Another thing, adjusting to my new vision, right? I was losing vision, and so I also stopped going to the lunchroom. All right, I stopped eating lunch because I started disliking crowded places. Right? Imagine this. At the time, this is how I saw. Right? It was very difficult for me to see people's faces. Right? So if I was walking in the hallways or going to the lunchroom, all I would see is an ocean of bodies moving around me, faceless bodies moving around me, and hearing voices. And it was really just, I had so much anxiety at the time, because I disliked feeling that way. And even thinking about it now gives me a little bit of the chills, because I think about it and I'm like, man, I remember I hated it. I hated it so much, being around people, because, you're used to seeing, I was used to seeing, people's faces. You turn around, oh, you recognize somebody. At the time, I didn't anymore, right? Which is weird now, because now I actually don't see people's faces no matter what. But at the time, the only way I could see a person's face would be if they stood right in front of me, semi-still, and if I would kind of concentrate in their face, right? But obviously I wouldn't do that because, it'd be like me weirdly looking at, staring at somebody, and that would probably be creepy from the other person, right? So, needless to say, when I would walk the hallways, I would kind of try and walk looking down, because I also, had to, I started doing what a lot of people who have RP do, is we scan the room, right? So we scan. That's, you look around, you look everywhere, because you're trying to get as much information into your brain so that you could kind of know what's around you, right? Because that's the only way that you're kind of able to get a full picture, right? Like I mentioned, we only have good central vision. And so that's what I would be doing. I would try and scan, and mostly I would look down, and I would bump into people, but normally, in a crowded hallway, who doesn't bump into somebody else, right? So I started going to the lunchroom, and what I did instead was I would go to the library. I would go to the library and stay there the whole lunch period, every single day, which was, it was easy for me because I was part of the Key Club, which the librarian was in charge of that program, and I was able to just go out there without anybody questioning me why I'm there or whatnot. Now, as to what I would do in the library, think about it. I think about it now, and it might be a little, maybe I was torturing myself a little bit, but at the same time, it was also in a way, I don't know if it's therapeutic or something, but what I would do was I would always sit in the same exact table, in the same exact chair that was in front of the same window, right? And this window had a really, the clear view of the soccer field that was outside where the soccer team would play, right? I believe now it's a community garden, but at the time it was a soccer field. And every day I would just go to the library, sit down, put my headphones on, and just look out the window and reminisce and just think about soccer. And I would get angry, I would get sad, I would get, I would smile because I would remember certain things that happened. And, I would try and imagine myself playing soccer, and you could say it was a little depressing, but at the same time, it was what I was going through, right? It was what I wanted, what I needed, and what I really wanted to do. And I didn't do any work or any of that stuff. my grades were okay. I didn't let them drop below a C because I was, deep inside, I was still that nerd, or that, I cared a lot about my education. So, I knew I was going to let them drop, lower than a C or whatnot. But I wasn't getting the grades that I should, that I normally would got, or normally would get. So I was still trying, but I wasn't there. Like, motivationally wise, I wasn't there. I was just getting through. As I mentioned before, that I was thinking of dropping my AP US History and my AP English course. I also began to have these thoughts of, am I going to be able to go to college? At one point I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not doing college. I'm dropping out of AP. I'm just going to go straight to regulars, get past high school, and then see what happens, right? It was just all these thoughts that, like I said, there was just a lot going on, and I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what to do. And the main thing for me was that soccer was just such a big part of me and like my life, that I ended up saying, like, you know what, if I can't play soccer, I ain't doing shit. Like, that's exactly how I felt. And, I was serious, And I remember that when I went to talk to my soccer coach, Mr. Kerr, he, something that stays with me till this day. 25 now, and I went and I told him, you know what, I'm not able to play soccer anymore because, my eyesight, and I lost vision and this and that. And I guess he understood. And the thing he told me was, he's like, Diego, don't allow this to keep you from being an athlete. He's like, you're a natural athlete, and I'm sure whatever sport you dedicate yourself to, you'll be good at, right? And I seriously, felt his sincereness when he told me that. And like, I remember that when I had told my my AP US History teacher, Miss Field, that I wanted to, quit the class and all that, she knew I played soccer, and she was a swim coach, and she told me, you know what, Diego, why don't you, try out swimming, see how that goes, maybe you'll like it. When she told me at that time, I wasn't really thinking about it. I was like, yeah, maybe, but it wasn't something I was like, okay, I'm gonna try. But once my soccer coach, mentioned those things to me, I was like, you know what, maybe I should try. My soccer coach was also the wrestling coach, right? So he told me, maybe I should try that too, because it's more of a physical sport, I guess, it's a physical sport, right? So I was like, okay, I tried wrestling, but I'll tell you right now that was probably the bad choice, because soccer players are mostly legs, I want to say, right? So my upper body strength was not the best, and I love the workout. I love the adrenaline and being in pain. That when you work out and you have that pain, I love that. But so like the drills, the workout part, the training was good, but just the actual wrestling drills, like, yeah, when it comes to like doing grabs and all these other things, I sucked. I remember we had this one drill where like our partner would have to grab our wrist, and we would have to, like, with our other hand, try and like unlock their grip, right? And my partner was this, like, the guy was like maybe like a foot shorter than me. He seemed kind of skinny to me, and he had the strongest grip ever. Like, he was an actual legit wrestler, and I was a junior, I believe. I don't know if he was a sophomore, but I don't know. And for the life of me, I could not ungrip his grip. And then when it was my turn, we would switch. He did it like in less than 10 seconds. Like, it was embarrassing. And I was like, yep, wrestling's not for me. So, at least I tried. I tried, and I don't know if I failed, but it was just not for me, right? So then I went into swimming, and I guess that's, that was awesome, because I had leg strength, and, my legs would just power me through, right? And so that's where I stayed with. I stayed with the swim team, and it was something that I began to enjoy, right? It was a different culture, and I appreciated the people there. I appreciated the coaches, and I began to, love the sport, Obviously, did not replace soccer. It, I was still sad about soccer. I was still missing it, but excuse me. But swimming gave me, that outlet for me to relieve some stress, and to, for a little bit of time, just not think of school, not think of my vision, even though I did have some trouble doing certain things. But, I had great teammates, and they would help me adjust, right? For example, like in some pools, the line underneath the water would be too, like let's say if the pool, well, usually the pool is blue and the lines that, can guide you to go straight in the bottom are usually darker blue. But in some pools, in some schools, they were like almost the same color. So it was really hard for me to distinguish them. So I would be scared of swimming too fast because I might hit myself in the head when I would reach the other side. So what I had a friend do was he would grab one of the kicking boards and he'll put it in the water when I was about to reach the end. That way I know that I'm about to reach the side and I'll be able to touch and then just go back. So, we found ways to accommodate and it was still awesome. But moving forward, I was still very stressed. I was still very overwhelmed. And the best thing for me was like, I just wanted the semester to be over. Like I just wanted it to be over. I wanted winter break to get here so that I could just, get away from everything. I wanted to get away from Chicago. I wanted to get away from school, away from my homework or whatever. Even my family, my friends. I just wanted to get away. I wanted to be on my own. So, like I mentioned in my other video, I didn't go to Mexico that summer. And so I told my parents, you know what? I want to go to Mexico. And so I went to Mexico for 20 days. I was never the one, like I love school so much. Like I enjoy being in school, I enjoy being with my friends. And I was never the one to like take a day off of school just for no reason. And so I actually left 2 days before school and winter break started. And I came back 3 days after winter break was over. And so during those 20 days in Mexico, I stayed at one of my uncle's house, and I would, stay with my cousin, and I enjoyed being there, having that family support there. But for the most part, I spent it at my house alone with my 2 dogs. I had 2 dogs, and it was just me on my own with my 2 dogs, and I would just listen to music. That's when I started actually writing poetry. I since then I've just been writing a lot more poetry, but that's when I actually started, channeling all my emotions and my feelings, everything I was feeling into paper, right? And so as I was there, just writing poetry and listening to music and being with my dogs, it was a moment that I needed. I needed to be alone. I needed to actually have time to think and clear my mind out of everything that was going on. And I began to think about my future. I began to think about what kind of person I wanted to be, what kind of person I was before. I began to think about my identity. I began to think about just all these things that just I hadn't had the chance to just actually, sit down and figure out what I wanted to do. For the first time, I actually cried. I cried and I, got that emotion out of me. And I was alone. I was with my 2 dogs, man's best friend. My 2 dogs were there with me, and sounds depressing. I'm not gonna say it's not, because even I think about it, and it's it's a bit depressing. But I needed it, right? I needed to be there on my own and just cry it out a little bit, and finally accept, this happened. I have no control over me losing vision, things like that. But what now? What can I do now that's gonna, push me forward, right? So I began to think, I have great support from family, great support from friends, teachers and mentors. They believe in me. They've told me certain things like, you can get through school, things like that. And so, I began to think, you know what, Diego, it's about time you start believing in yourself, right? I need to believe in myself. It's not enough for everybody else to believe in me. If I want to succeed, I need to start believing in myself, right? So, was I happy? No. Was I sad? Yes. Was I still, missing soccer, was I still mad? Was I still angry inside? I was. Was I, not accepting of using the cane and, having to do extra steps and having to do all these other things like, being a person who is blind, right? I was still not accepting of all that. But the difference was that I had found that motivation and that the reason as to why I wanted to succeed, right? The reason as why I should go to college. I was like, okay, Diego, if you want to get a job, you're going to have to put something that's going to make you, okay, this is why I'm qualified to do certain things, right? So I was like, yes, you're gonna have to work twice as hard, but you're always gonna have to work twice as hard no matter what, right? Being a person who was blind, at the time I knew nothing. Like I knew nothing other than maybe learning how to use a few technology things here and there. But I had never met somebody who was actually blind and successful per se, right? All I knew is that me and my older sister were both, we both had this eye condition that we were losing vision, but I never knew anybody who was actually in the in the working field or whatnot, right? So I basically said, okay, I'm gonna have to just figure things out on my own.